Imagine this. You stumble upon an old book at a flea market. No title, no author, just a thick, leathery cover that feels wrong. The vendor insists it's worthless, but something about it pulls you in. You flip through the pages. Symbols you don't understand. Sketches that make your skin crawl. And a whisper, not from the vendor, not from anyone around you, but from the book itself, almost like it's alive. You leave it behind, shaken. But 3 days later, you hear that the vendor has died. And then, the next person who bought the book disappeared. This isn't a horror movie. This is real. And the manuscript? It has a name. Codex Lethae, or as some call it now, the Book of Death. Imagine this. You stumble upon an old book at a flea market. No title, no author, just a thick leathery cover that feels wrong. The vendor insists it's worthless, but something about it pulls you in. You flip through the pages, symbols you don't understand, sketches that make your skin crawl. And a whisper, not from the vendor, not from anyone around you, but from the book itself, almost like it's alive. You leave it behind, shaken, but 3 days later, you hear that the vendor has died. And then, the next person who bought the book disappeared. This isn't a horror movie. This is real. And the manuscript? It has a name. Codex Lethae, or as some call it now, the Book of Death. Since the dawn of time, humanity has left behind echoes of itself, not in stone or fire, but in words. The written word has been our greatest invention and perhaps our most dangerous. From sacred scrolls that shaped entire religions to banned books that sparked revolutions, what we write defines who we are and what we fear. But some writings were never meant to be read. One such artifact surfaced quietly in the winter of 1981. A manuscript with no known author, no clear origin, and no logical explanation. It wasn't cataloged in any library, nor listed in any archive. Its pages weren't made of paper, but of a strange, fibrous material. Some claimed it was calfskin, others feared worse. Its language? Unknown. Its symbols? Incomprehensible. But the few who dared study it all agreed on one thing. It had presence. They say it was cold to the touch, even when placed in the sun. That its pages never yellowed, never tore, and that no matter where you left it, it somehow moved. The first known owner was a reclusive book collector named Andrzej Karol. He found it buried beneath a stack of war documents in a closed-down bookstore in Warsaw. He brought it home with excitement, believing it might be an early Slavic religious text. But within weeks, that excitement turned to obsession. His friends said he stopped answering calls. Neighbors reported strange noises from his apartment, chanting, scratching, and what sounded like weeping. Then silence. On January 23, 1982, Andrzej was found dead in his study. His eyes were missing, not gouged, not cut, simply gone. No blood, no weapon. Only the manuscript, lying open on his desk, turned to a page marked with a single phrase, Oculus pro liberum, an eye for the book. Whatever this manuscript was, it wasn't just a historical curiosity, it was something else entirely, something that looked back. 3 years passed. The manuscript was never claimed, never sold, until a private courier delivered it, anonymously, to the home of Dr. Eleanor Bright, a renowned linguist at Cambridge University. Eleanor specialized in ancient Slavic and pre-Christian dialects. She had spent her life decoding forgotten tongues and obscure texts. But this was different. Her notes, recovered later by police, detailed her fascination. She called the symbols linguistically erratic but purposeful, like they were written by something, not for humans. In her private journal, she wrote about insomnia. She described seeing figures in her peripheral vision, hearing a name whispered inside her skull, always at the same time each night. Veloth. And then there was the mirror. On the last night she was seen alive, her neighbor reported hearing glass shatter, followed by a scream, but not like anything human. Eleanor's body was found the next morning, upside down, crucifix style, suspended from the ceiling of her study. Pages from the manuscript had been torn and stuffed into her mouth. Her final translation, typed and left by the fireplace, read, "The soul who deciphers me shall be unmade." By the late 1990s, the manuscript had become something of a myth, spoken about in online occult forums, passed around academic whispers, referenced vaguely in old bibliophile newsletters. But one man saw in it not a warning, but an opportunity. Malcolm Reese was an independent filmmaker, best known for his cult horror film Cicada Moon, a low-budget found-footage movie that unexpectedly became a sleeper hit. When a private collector from Prague sent him photocopied excerpts of the Codex Lethae, Reese immediately recognized potential. He believed the mystique around the book, the mystery, the deaths, could be used to market what he called the most terrifying film ever made. He began work on a new project titled The 13th Glyph, a psychological horror thriller inspired directly by the Codex. Reese even used real passages from the manuscript in the script, and according to reports, attempted to film scenes based on Eleanor Bright's final translation. He claimed it was an immersive technique to bring out real fear in the actors. Production, however, was a nightmare. Within weeks, 2 crew members quit, citing vivid nightmares and intense paranoia. Actors reported hearing whispers during takes, always just off mic. Set equipment malfunctioned in ways that defied physics. Cameras drained battery power in seconds. Lighting rigs flickered with no source of interference, and audio clips contained strange, layered distortions that no one could edit out. Then came the final incident. One night, Malcolm locked himself in the studio alone. Security footage shows him pacing the set, muttering to himself, staring at walls covered in runes copied from the Codex. At 3:44 a.m., he calmly poured gasoline across every corner of the soundstage. He stood in the center, lit a match, and whispered something inaudible. The flames consumed everything. When police found him hours later, he was wandering barefoot through a nearby field, shaking violently, eyes bloodshot. He kept repeating, "It wasn't a script, it was a ritual. We weren't acting, we were inviting." He died in a psychiatric hospital 5 months later. Doctors cited brain swelling, but one nurse who was with him during his final hours claimed his eyes remained wide open until the very end. It's easy to dismiss a single death as coincidence, even 2 or 3, but 5, 6, more? A pattern was forming, one that even skeptics began to take seriously. Those who merely owned the manuscript, who possessed it but never tried to understand it, seemed to survive. But those who tried to translate, rewrite, film, or decipher it, every single one met an unnatural end. This led some theorists, both academic and fringe, to an unsettling conclusion. The Codex wasn't just cursed in the traditional sense. It was a self-protecting artifact, not designed to kill indiscriminately, but rather to defend itself by targeting anyone who attempted to uncover its secrets. A cognitive hazard, one researcher called it, a mimetic virus that infects not the body, but the mind. It enters through curiosity, it feeds on obsession, and once you begin to understand, it's already too late. In 2012, a fragment of the manuscript was uploaded to a deep web archive under a subdirectory labeled Only Divine Language. The uploader used the pseudonym Vox Crawl and claimed to have obtained the scanned page from a contact in Bucharest. Within 48 hours, his forum account went dark. Then came the obituary. A 27-year-old graduate student in Vienna found dead in his apartment. No sign of forced entry, no substance abuse, no medical condition. But there was something unusual. His browser history revealed a chilling pattern. He had stared at the Codex image for 7 hours straight. His final post on a now-deleted thread read, "The symbols don't change, but I do. Every time I blink, they come closer." The thread was removed less than 3 minutes later. No moderators took credit. The archive it was hosted on mysteriously vanished the next day. And to this day, no one knows how that scanned page ever made it online, or who else might have seen it before it was gone. So where is the Codex Lethae today? If you believe the official story, now buried in academic journals and denied by most public institutions, it no longer exists. The last verified copy, the same one believed to have passed from Eleanor Bright to Malcolm Reese, was reportedly destroyed in the studio fire. Case closed. But not everyone believes that. Some researchers claim the original manuscript was never destroyed at all. According to confidential documents leaked from a private collector's estate in Krakow, the real codex was quietly sold in 2009 at a secret auction held in Zurich. The winning bid? Over 3.2 million euros. The buyer? Unidentified. The only clue came from an anonymous note sent to an occult podcast in 2014. It simply read, "The Codex is alive, and it remembers everyone who's tried to forget it." Then there are the rumors. A professor at a university in Italy claims to have seen a locked box engraved with glyphs identical to those in Eleanor Bright's translation. A former Vatican archivist, under condition of anonymity, suggested that the Codex was not the only manuscript of its kind, but part of a trilogy, the others lost or hidden, waiting to be found. And a darknet user named Noctura72 claimed to have recovered the index page of a second volume, what she called the Book of Sleep. Her account was deleted the next day. She hasn't been heard from since. The most persistent story, however, involves a private society known as the Circle of Orphic Silence, comprised of rare book collectors, esoteric scholars, and former members of intelligence agencies. They allegedly confiscate cursed objects and store them in a secure vault beneath Prague's Strahov Monastery. Several former librarians who work there confirm that certain wings of the archive are restricted indefinitely, requiring biometric access and a sworn vow of secrecy. Is the Codex Lethae inside that vault? We may never know. But if the pattern holds, if the deaths, the madness, and the disappearances are more than coincidence, then it stands to reason. Wherever it is, it's still watching, still waiting. By now you may be wondering, was all of this just coincidence? A string of tragedies linked by conspiracy theories and internet rabbit holes? It's possible. Every name mentioned in this story, Andre Carroll, Eleanor Bright, Malcolm Rees, Vox Crawl, they all had their own struggles, their own demons. Carroll was a reclusive hoarder. Eleanor suffered from chronic insomnia and anxiety. Rees had long been rumored to suffer from bipolar episodes. And Vox Crawl? No one even knows who he really was. But consider this, none of them ever met. None of them lived in the same country. None of them shared culture, language, or belief. And yet each of them described the same patterns, the same symbols, the same psychological deterioration, all tied to the same text. And when you remove the humans from the equation, what's left behind? A book. A book that doesn't age, doesn't rot, doesn't die. A book that, despite being lost, continues to be whispered about in forums, private chats, podcast episodes, and anonymous tips. A book that can't be remembered and yet refuses to be forgotten. Even those who mock it, who deny its existence, can't explain away the trail of madness it leaves behind. So perhaps the Codex Lethae is not just cursed, perhaps it's alive. Some researchers now argue that the book was never meant to be read. It was meant to be opened. A gate, a signal, a beacon. And once opened, it doesn't just affect the reader, it affects reality itself. In the end, belief is optional. But consequence? That doesn't require your belief. So the next time you come across an ancient manuscript with no author, no title, and no history, ask yourself not what the book contains, but what it remembers. And if you open it, will it start reading you? Maybe the scariest stories aren't about monsters lurking in the woods or demons in the attic. Maybe the darkest horror lies in the ordinary, in a book, sitting silently, waiting to be opened. A story that doesn't end when the last page is turned, but begins. You see, the Codex Lethae may or may not be real. Maybe it's just a tale born from fear and obsession. But history has shown us time and again, ideas can kill, belief can infect. And sometimes a story is just powerful enough to write its readers out of existence. So ask yourself, if you found the Codex tomorrow, would you read it or would you look away? Because sometimes the only way to survive the story is to not become part of it. If this story sent a chill down your spine, If you found yourself wondering whether you'd open that book, let us know in the comments below. Would you read the Codex Lethae knowing what it might do? And if you want more stories like this, where the line between myth and madness is paper thin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because we're just getting started, and some stories, they don't want to be forgotten.